Questions? Yes?
Interesting when you're talking about the label, if you're in a situation where you're not a manager, say, and
Yep.
you're in a certain role,
Yep.
you mentioned that you might be putting yourself in a label because you're not leader, therefore you shouldn't speak up, or you shouldn't, speak as if you were the leader, because you will get people offside. So you're taking on that role that, or you're taking on the action that your role should, sort of limit you. That can be, what do you do in that scenario? So I thought you were sort of saying maybe that you're limiting yourself.
Yes.
But you can't help that. You have to know your place.
So there's a difference between knowing your place. Like if I go into a meeting and I go, right, everybody, sit down, but I'm not actually the person who's hosting the meeting, people are going to go, what's going on? It doesn't really fit. But what I mean by having that label is you see people will label themselves with certain stuff like, I'm not good enough, or I'm anxious, or I'm depressed, or I'm only the junior. I've got nothing to add. There's a label that they attach to themselves. And regardless of what you do, I'll see someone and I'll say, so, did you get a clinical diagnosis? And they say, yes, I was given the diagnosis of anxiety. Okay, who gave you that diagnosis? A GP 8 years ago saw me for 6 minutes and they said, I've got anxiety. And now, 6 years later, 10 years later, whatever it is, they say, I'm anxious. Because I was given that diagnosis by somebody all that time ago. They were given a label and they've attached it to themselves. And rather than saying, my experience is at that time I was worried. That time I was fearful. Their whole life could have changed. But that label then is stuck to them. And if you stick labels to yourselves or you allow someone else to stick labels to you, you end up carrying them around as part of your identity. They stick to your identity story and hold you in one place. So it's really good to review that. So you walk into a meeting, you think, I'm the junior here. Well, is that reality? Yes, it is. But you might be the junior, but your belief, what that label contains, might be that I can't speak up, that I can't challenge, that I've got nothing to say. When in fact you might have something brilliant to contribute. So actually not having the label that I'm the junior, but maybe your label is I'm less experienced. Or and then you choose your response. Here's an opportunity, I've got something to add, and choose to add it rather than limiting yourself and not doing it at all. So you see how labels can actually be quite damaging. But knowing your place, not really a nice way to frame it, but having a reality check is really important. Because you walk in, I'm better than the CEO. I can make all these decisions. Well, actually, you can't. There's reality checks you need to make on your life experience as well. That gets people into trouble as much as the opposite. Good. Any other questions? Yes?
So like your, thanks for sharing your story as well. Like your example, Tiger versus Richard.
Sorry, which one?
I like your example about Tiger versus Roger Federer.
Yeah.
So that means you think you do the right thing, doing the same thing, but the other side is you try different things and you can figure out what you like.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
I don't have a question, but I just like the way you explain that.
It's really good because if you think about the difference, one is you put yourself on a fixed track. And for leaders it might be, I've got to be CEO, and off you go. But in fact, what if you allowed yourself to explore opportunities for what you like? Because there's a bit of a social conditioning.
Yes.
And I tell you what, it's lonely at the top. If you've never been at the top of an organisation, you don't know how lonely it is. It really can be a challenge. And if that is not your thing, if you're not geared for that, don't do it. Do what you love, do it really well. When I'm working with kids, I talk about the magic cross. There's a magic cross between what you're good at and what you love. And that space in the middle is where the magic happens. And when you do that, you create something. You add value to the universe. If everybody wants to be CEO, imagine if we had a world full of CEOs, nothing to get done. But everyone wants to be CEO. Everyone wants to be the big leader. But you can lead from anywhere. Because you lead because you're good at what you do and you love it. And your passion speaks more than anything. I had a boss and one of his first pieces of advice was, I don't give a stuff what you do, just do it with passion. And he was spot on. He was spot on because when you do it with passion, you can correct, you can learn as you go. But if you're not injecting passion, how are you going to motivate and inspire people to do differently? How are you going to get people to collaborate with you unless you're passionate about it and you bring them along? So I think, thank you, it's a really good reflection. Yes?
Just again, just the example of the 10,000 hours versus 10,000 experiments. As CEO of a few different organisations, hasn't been the first time where I've gone to my HR manager and said, you know, okay, you've given me this short list of candidates. I'd like to see the next 10 or 20 or whatever to see why it is that you've selected this short list. Whereby, and it's one thing that I've noticed even in the recruiting industry, there's definitely a differentiation between whether you're going to hire a generalist or a specialist. The specialist may be the person who's done the 10,000 hours of swinging a golf club, whereas the generalist may have 10,000 different life experiences that provide you with a much broader and maybe a different perspective as to how it is that you're going to challenge that individual to perform that particular role. And I find it interesting, and it has to be a bit of a balance in some cases, but I find it interesting that the recruiting, a lot of the agencies tend to stick to the what I would call the specialist type role as opposed to.
So three reflections on that. Yep. The first one is, remember that the HR person is employing not to get the best person, but to keep themselves safe. Because they've got a boss to report to. If they hire somebody who doesn't work out, they can say, you didn't do your job, and then they have a psychological safety for not doing it. So they're always going to limit risk. Same when you go and sell to an organisation. When you're selling to a purchasing manager, they don't care about the end outcome. They just want to be safe. So if they can go to their boss and say, oh, we bought really good stuff and we got an extra 10% off, the boss is going to go, you did really well. Oh, I can relax, I'll move on to my next project. Whereas the people who are selling the stuff, or the end user, the consumer of the product, they really care about it, but they get missed out because you've got to work on psychological safety. That's my first point. The second point is that there's always this opportunity for seeking people who are specialists. If I hop in a plane, I want the pilot to have done 10,000 hours. All right, so perfection is required. If I have to go and I need surgery, 10,000 hours. But when I'm actually hiring for a job, I'm actually hiring for a position, I've actually done things where I've said I want 2 wildcards. Give me 2 wildcards when you're employing. So you'll still see your top 5 or 6. But then you ask them, just give me 2 out of the box. A number of times I've actually hired the wildcard and they've been fabulous. It's beyond count. Because actually, when we think about it, if we're starting to hire for a position, by actually starting with a job description, it's a place to start. But I go job description and then I write a person description. And I write a description of the person who would be perfect in that job. And this takes in culture, it takes in team, it takes in behaviours, it takes in mindset, it takes in everything that I need. And if I absolutely need a specialist, then that'll show up in the person description. And I'll go and hire against that. But if I want someone who's going to be able to be agile, then I want someone who's demonstrated that in their life. Someone who can take a risk, experiment, not be stuck, move about, help me challenge me, take the organisation forward, grow towards our goals, then that's what I need to look for. So you're absolutely right. So there's 3 reflections from your comment. One is, when we ask people to do a job, check if they're doing it simply for psychological safety or for the outcome that the organisation actually gets. Number 2, don't forget wildcards. And number 3, do a person description to actually understand who it is that will do the perfect job and hire that person. Don't just go off a job description, because you're not even cutting 1/10 of the opportunity in terms of deciding who you're going to want for that particular role.
Excellent, thank you. I'll have to wrap up the questions now, but thank you so much, Phil. That was tremendous having that presentation on getting unstuck, and it sounds like that there's been some great insights gathered. Would everyone like to get up quickly and we'll take a group photo with Phil up the back of the room, and then we'll do the next exercise. We've got half an hour left of the event, so
Thanks.
well done.
Thank you. Your photo?
Just a quick test. Let's see if we're going to work. We are going to work. All right, nice big smiles, everybody. Fantastic. Great. Hold that.
Yay,
Cool.
well done.